Have you ever awakened to find that the world around you has lost all meaning? That the duties which once filled your days now feel hollow, the relationships that once brought joy seem empty, and even your greatest achievements appear as dust scattered by the wind? Perhaps you have looked upon your life and wondered why you continue to rise each morning when all efforts seem to lead nowhere, when all paths appear to circle back to the same place of emptiness. This feeling is not new to humanity. Long before our time, the great teacher Confucius observed that there comes a moment in every person's journey when the very foundation of their existence seems to crumble, when the rituals feel meaningless, when duty becomes burden, when even the love of family cannot penetrate the darkness that has settled upon the heart. But the master understood something profound about these moments of despair. He knew that what appears to be an ending is often the beginning of true wisdom. When everything seems pointless, when the world loses its color and purpose fades like morning mist, there is one simple practice that can restore meaning to your existence. Not through grand gestures or dramatic changes, but through the quiet cultivation of what Confucius called the rectification of the heart. Because the master discovered that meaninglessness is not a problem of the world around us, but a symptom of disorder within us. And this disorder can be healed, but only through understanding the true source of purpose. Most people believe that meaning comes from external accomplishments. They think that if they can achieve enough, accumulate enough, be recognized enough, then life will finally make sense. They chase after honors like a dog chases its own tail, never catching what they seek because they are looking in the wrong direction. But Confucius taught that this approach leads only to deeper emptiness because it places the source of meaning outside of ourselves, in things we cannot fully control. The master said, "The gentleman seeks to perfect his virtue. The small man seeks only profit." This was not merely moral instruction, but practical wisdom about where true satisfaction is found. When you place your sense of purpose in external achievements, you become like a leaf blown by every wind. Success brings temporary joy, but it fades quickly, leaving you hungrier than before. Failure brings despair that can last for seasons. You are no longer the master of your own contentment, but a servant to circumstances beyond your control. But there is another way, one that the ancient sages discovered through careful observation of human nature. True meaning does not come from what you accomplish, but from who you become in the process of living. It comes not from the destination, but from how you walk the path, not from what the world gives you, but from what you give to the world through the cultivation of your character. Confucius understood that every human being carries within them a mandate from heaven, a purpose that cannot be taken away by failure nor diminished by success. This purpose is not found in grand achievements that the world will remember, but in the daily practice of virtue, in the gradual refinement of the heart, in the patient cultivation of wisdom and benevolence. When you align your actions with this deeper calling, when you focus on becoming rather than having, meaning returns naturally to your life. But how does one begin this transformation when everything feels empty? How does one find the strength to cultivate virtue when the very concept of virtue seems hollow? Here the master's wisdom becomes deeply practical. He taught that change begins not with great efforts, but with small, consistent actions performed with sincerity of heart. Consider the farmer who plants seeds in spring. He does not plant because he feels motivated or inspired. He plants because it is the season for planting, because his family depends upon the harvest, because this is his duty and his way of contributing to the order of the world. Some mornings he wakes tired. Some days the soil seems hard. Some seasons the weather is unfavorable. But he plants anyway, not from passion, but from commitment to something larger than his momentary feelings. This is the key that Confucius discovered. When everything seems pointless, you do not wait for meaning to return. You do not search for inspiration or motivation. You simply begin to practice the virtues, to fulfill your duties, to treat others with kindness and respect, not because you feel like it, but because these actions are inherently right. And in the doing, meaning slowly returns. The Master taught that there are 5 constant virtues that form the foundation of a meaningful life. Benevolence, which is love and compassion for all living beings. Righteousness, which is doing what is right even when it costs you. Propriety, which is acting with respect and dignity in all circumstances. Wisdom, which is seeing clearly beyond the illusions that cause suffering. And trustworthiness, which is being reliable in word and deed. When life feels empty, when purpose seems lost, the path forward is to choose one of these virtues and practice it regardless of how you feel. Not because you expect immediate results, not because you can see how it will solve your problems, but because the practice itself begins to restore order to your inner world. Like water slowly wearing smooth the rough edges of stone, consistent practice of virtue gradually transforms the heart. Perhaps you begin with benevolence. Each day, you look for one small way to show kindness to another person. Not grand gestures that might bring recognition, but simple acts performed in private. A gentle word to a servant, patience with a difficult family member, a moment of genuine attention given to someone who's suffering. You do this not because you feel compassionate, but because compassion is what the situation calls for. Or perhaps you begin with righteousness. Each day, you choose to do what you know is right in one small situation, even when no one is watching, even when it brings no reward. You speak truthfully when a lie would be easier. You fulfill a promise when breaking it would be convenient. You stand up for what is just when others remain silent. Again, not because you feel brave or principled, but because right action creates right feeling, not the other way around. The wisdom of this approach lies in understanding that feelings follow actions, not the reverse. When you wait to feel motivated before acting virtuously, you may wait forever. But when you act virtuously regardless of feeling, virtue slowly becomes natural to you. The empty heart begins to fill, not with external achievements, but with the quiet satisfaction that comes from living in harmony with the way. Confucius observed that most people have this backwards. They believe they must first feel purpose before they can act meaningfully. But the Master taught that meaning emerges from meaningful action. The purpose is created through the faithful performance of duty, that joy arises naturally from a life lived in accordance with virtue. When everything seems pointless, the cure is not to search for point, but to create it through the patient cultivation of character. This is why the Master taught that when confusion clouds the mind, when the world appears senseless, you must return to the fundamental practices that connect you to the eternal order. These are not complex philosophies or mysterious rituals, but simple actions that any person can perform regardless of their station in life. The merchant can practice honesty in his dealings. The student can show respect to his teachers. The child can honor his parents. The ruler can govern with justice rather than force. Each of these actions may seem small when measured against the vastness of your despair, but Confucius understood that great transformations begin with humble steps. Just as a mighty river is formed by countless drops of rain, a meaningful life is built through countless moments of choosing virtue over convenience, duty over desire, service over selfishness. The power lies not in the grandness of any single act, but in the consistency of walking the correct path. When the heart is troubled and purpose seems absent, there is tremendous temptation to seek dramatic solutions. People abandon their families to chase distant dreams. They cast aside their duties to pursue fleeting pleasures. They break their commitments because these feel burdensome. But the master observed that such dramatic gestures usually lead to greater emptiness because they sever us from the very relationships and responsibilities that give life its foundation. True wisdom lies in understanding that the cure for meaninglessness is often found exactly where you are, in the duties you already have, in the relationships that surround you, in the small opportunities for virtue that present themselves each day. The son who faithfully cares for aging parents may not feel that this brings glory, but through this service he connects himself to the eternal chain of love and obligation that binds generation to generation. The teacher who patiently instructs even the slowest student may not see immediate results, but through this dedication he participates in the sacred work of cultivating human potential. Consider how water finds its way to the sea. It does not force itself through the mountains, but flows around obstacles, following the natural contours of the earth. It moves sometimes swiftly, sometimes slowly, but always in the direction of its ultimate destination. When you align your actions with virtue, you become like this water, finding the natural path toward meaning and fulfillment. You do not struggle against the world, but work in harmony with the moral order that governs all things. The Master taught that there are 3 sources of wisdom available to every person: learning from the words of the wise, learning from observation of the world, and learning from personal experience. When life feels pointless, it is often because we have neglected these sources of guidance. We stop reading the words of those who have walked before us. We stop paying attention to the lessons that nature and human behavior teach us daily. We become so lost in our own suffering that we fail to learn from our experiences. But wisdom is always available to those who seek it with sincere hearts. The farmer learns patience from watching seeds grow slowly in the soil. The craftsman learns precision from seeing how small errors create large flaws. The parent learns sacrifice from caring for children who cannot yet understand the depth of love being given to them. Every role in life, every relationship, every duty carried out with integrity becomes a teacher that reveals deeper truths about how to live well. Confucius observed that people often make their lives more difficult than necessary by fighting against the natural order of things. They want to harvest before they have planted. They expect respect before they have shown respect to others. They desire wisdom without being willing to study, peace without practicing restraint, love without learning to love. But the way operates according to unchanging principles. You cannot gather what you have not sown. You cannot receive what you are not willing to give. You cannot become what you are not willing to practice. This is why when everything seems pointless, the correct response is not to question why life has become meaningless, but to ask what virtues you have neglected, what duties you have abandoned, what practices you have allowed to slip away. Often the emptiness you feel is simply the natural consequence of living disconnected from the moral principles that give human existence its proper structure and direction. The path back to meaning begins with honest self-examination, not harsh judgment or cruel self-criticism, but the gentle questioning that a wise teacher uses with the struggling student. Where have I allowed pride to replace humility? Where have I chosen comfort over duty? Where have I taken from others without giving in return? Where have I spoken without listening, acted without thinking, demanded without serving? This examination is not meant to create guilt, but to create clarity. Just as a gardener surveys his plot to see which areas need attention, you survey your character to see which virtues need cultivation. The goal is not to achieve perfection overnight, but to identify the next small step toward greater harmony with the way. When you have identified where improvement is needed, the path forward becomes clear. You do not need to transform your entire life at once. You need only choose one virtue to practice more fully, one duty to fulfill more completely, one relationship to honor more deeply. Through this focused attention, meaning begins to return gradually, like dawn slowly illuminating the landscape. The master understood that this process requires both patience and persistence. Virtue is not achieved through momentary effort, but through sustained practice over many seasons. The tree that bears the sweetest fruit has grown slowly, sending its roots deep into the earth, weathering storms without breaking, drawing nourishment from soil and sunlight through countless days of faithful growth. Human character develops in the same way. Each act of kindness strengthens your capacity for benevolence. Each moment of self-restraint increases your ability to choose wisdom over impulse. Each time you speak truthfully despite temptation to deceive, you become more naturally honest. What begins as conscious effort gradually becomes second nature, until virtue flows from you as naturally as water flows downhill. But this transformation requires understanding that the practice itself is the reward. You do not cultivate virtue in order to feel better about yourself or to gain recognition from others. You cultivate virtue because this is how human beings are meant to live, because this is your part in maintaining the harmony of the world, because this is how you fulfill the mandate of heaven that exists within every human heart. Heart. When you find yourself in that dark valley where nothing seems to hold meaning, remember that countless others have walked this path before you and found their way back to the light. The emptiness you feel is not permanent, nor is it a sign of failure. It is simply the natural consequence of living disconnected from the eternal principles that give human life its proper order and direction. The solution is neither complex nor mysterious. You need not embark upon grand journeys or achieve great recognition. You need only return to the simple practices that connect you to the way. Choose one virtue and practice it faithfully each day. Fulfill your duties with sincerity. Treat others with genuine respect. Speak truthfully even when it costs you. Act with kindness even when you feel nothing. These small actions may seem insignificant when measured against the vastness of your despair, but they carry within them the power to transform your entire existence. Just as a single candle can illuminate a dark room, a single act performed with virtue can begin to restore meaning to a life that has lost its way. The Master taught us that we become what we repeatedly do. When everything seems pointless, do what is right anyway. In time, meaning will return not as a gift from the outside world, but as the natural fruit of a life lived in harmony with virtue.